Now, there's a tough act to follow. I was worried about everybody having enough energy after lunch. Obviously, hopefully you're fired up from the drumming. I want to talk to you a little bit about a lesson I learned from my son, Jimmy. The message Jimmy always reminds me is that it's only a problem if you make it one. I want to give you a work example and then the personal life example around Jimmy and how that worked. Because we kind of go through stages when crisis happens. It's the shock phase that it's even happening. Then there's the taking a step back and trying to figure it out. Then you build some kind of strategy, hopefully. You take action, and then you do the DQ. The DQ is the don't quit. Why the reason most of you are in the room here, because you have that no quit attitude. Most people, for the hours we put in and the effort we put in, they think we're crazy. So the shock in 2008 was no secret. Marcus brought it up this morning. But I've got to tell you that in my October of 2008, I'm in the event planning and training business. What is the first thing that comes off the financial statement? Right? My fourth largest client in Central America. Local market drops 62% in a weekend because of the financial crisis, and they elect a Chavista government. And they're in a consumer-based business. Everybody is terrified. And I was 3 months away from completing the purchase after 8 years of actually owning 100% of the shares of the company. So in January, I was completely in charge. Let me tell you how excited I was. My partner called and apologized, like he knew there was going to be a world crisis in 2001 when we made the deal together. That's the shock phase. So then I had to take a step back and tell you about this quote, and I have the cubicles in the way so that you know that this is on the wall, the big wall in my office, this statement of impossible is just a little harder. Because a man by the name of Pat Hyman, who I was blessed to have as my chair, and he's a former CEO of Vistage, reminded me in our one-on-one session one day that the most wealth in America in the last 100 years was created during the Great Depression. So I had a choice. So with my 1-hour strategy sheet that Pat actually helped me develop, Vistage, our secret weapon, in 1 hour I built the strategy. And on my rally cry, I wrote down, work for 2012. And in that strategy, my plan was to take action. And for the next 3 years, I would work every day for 2012, just trying to break even and focus on building a great big company. And in 2012, guess what happened? We had an all-time record year. So it worked. So where did I learn this getting from shock to success? How did I have that don't quit? Because let me tell you, along the way, lots of things in that business proposition went wrong. Lots of people told me I needed to change business. I was in the event planning and training business in a world economic crisis. Hotels were not filling rooms like they are today. So I learned this from my son, Jimmy, from this guy. My house, we call him Superman, hence the picture. Jimmy's 13 today. He was about 2 there. I want you to imagine that your son is 11 weeks old. He looks something like this. And Mom, my wife Cheryl, notices that he's not reacting to touch very well, and she accidentally drops a cloth diaper on his face, and he doesn't react till it touches him. And one eye's going a little astray. You can see it's his left eye here. And the pediatrician says, you need to go see the pediatric ophthalmologist at Children's Hospital here, in the great hospital we have here in San Diego. And there I am sitting holding Jimmy in front of this doctor. The doctor's looking at me, and the way you diagnose what Jimmy has is he takes a bright light and a glass and looks in the back of Jimmy's eye. The same diagnosis since 1897. This is not a hard thing to figure out if you know what you're doing. And I can tell by the look on the doctor's face as I'm holding Jimmy that this is going to be really bad, because the body language on that doctor told me we've got a massive problem. I don't even hear what he says. Thank the Lord my wife was there because she's writing it down. He says, your son has ONH, something called optic nerve hypoplasia, the number one cause of infant blindness and vision impairment in the United States, and it just doesn't affect your vision. It creates a whole plethora of 20 really bad things that could happen to your kid. In fact, if you read the guide, it scares the life out of you. The Guide to ONH, Parenting with ONH. And then the doctor gives us a list of the 13 things that Jimmy will never do. Well, that was the shock phase. Oh, and the best part, the last thing the doctor said to my wife, which is a really strong-willed, they call her the home CEO, he said, and there's nothing you can do. So we went through the shock of 7 days, and she was really pissed off because he said there was nothing she could do, and then she chased it. That's where we took a step back and we strategized, because 7 days later, I watched the Discovery Channel and see a man, Mark Wiedemann, I'm going to not do his name justice, who has just completed going to the top of Mount Everest, and he's completely blind. In fact, since then, he's completed all the 7 peaks of the world with no vision at all. And we know Jimmy has some. So we start to strategize. I love this picture. And we make a list of everything that Jimmy can do if he's completely blind. And we get after it. We chase down every program. My wife gets on that internet where the doctor said not to go, and we find the best guy in the world, the expert at what these kids have. It's a first world problem in America. He's in Los Angeles, and he is screaming to get kids from infant to do the study for 5 years. It's going to be completely paid for, and we drive to LA for 6 times a year and then some to make sure Jimmy gets to participate in the study and gets all the help he can get. And then we chase down every social program that you can imagine, including the ones the doctors can't recommend. And I look at the doc and I say, well, I know you can't tell me to do that, but if it was your kid, would you do it? And every doctor every single time said, absolutely. We just don't have enough medical evidence to officially tell you it's okay. And so I want you to imagine that, like a parent, we did it. But we went to programs with other parents. There's thousands of kids in America that have this, and a lot of parents said, this is too hard. We can't do this. At about 30 months, we had to give Jimmy injections because one of his problems is he doesn't produce growth hormone. You know, the famous HGH that athletes take illegally? Ours gets delivered on a monthly basis to our home. Before we start, and it's paid for in the beginning, a cost of $45,000 a year in medicine. Fortunately, the majority of it's covered. But I was going to find a way anyways, because that's what we do as Vistage members, right? So we took action. We chased everything we possibly could. And along the way, we found out programs that Jimmy could do. Here he's doing a back flip with a twist on the tramp where he won gold medals and was so proud to beat other kids that could see. Because when he did a flip, I found out from the doctor that he landed those flips on muscle memory. He couldn't see the ground. Now, I've never done a flip in my life. Most of you haven't. I want you to imagine doing it completely blind and sticking it and beating kids that can see completely on muscle memory. That's absolutely crazy. And then along the way, on this don't quit stuff, Jimmy comes home one day, he wants to be on a team, because it's hard to be on a team, he can't catch a ball. And he says, Papa, I want to play flag football. I call the doctor, I'm going, this is a bad idea. Because if he gets hurt, we have to give him an injection. Because it's part of his endocrine makeup, it's the problem. Doctor says, you just make sure you're at every game and every practice. Jimmy can play. Jimmy got 5 tackles in 2 years. How he saw the flag, I have no idea. And then he comes to me one day and he says, Papa, I want to play basketball. I'm thinking, this is insane. I asked him what he could see at the hoop. He said, I can see fuzzy orange. You know, from the free throw line, he says, I see a fuzzy orange thing and the black pole that's standing behind the hoop, because it's the first thing I put up when we buy a house. And I tell him he's going to get knocked over. He might sit on the bench the whole time. He's going to have a really hard time. Kids are going to run into him. He's not going to see them because he sees light over here and 70 over here. And he says, I'm going to play anyways. And I don't ever tell him he can't, but I got to tell you on that occasion, I tried to talk him out of it. And that's where the don't quit really comes into what we do. When you have that first shock phase. Jimmy does not have the best physical abilities in what he does, but he is the most successful kid in the thousands of kids in the study because we chased it, and then he challenges us every day. In fact, you know, sometimes it was really hard patching his eyes 6 hours a day. Imagine taking your 2-year-old, walking up to him and taking him with the vision from the only eye he can see out of, and then expect him for the next 6 hours to survive that way. It was an attempt to make the bad eye work as hard as it could to try and develop between 0 and 5. Along the way, Jimmy's trips to Children's Hospital haven't been so bad. If you know the movies the Lego Movie or Guardians of the Galaxy, This is the guy, Jimmy's favorite actor. By the way, Jimmy wants to make movies. He wants to prove that somebody with blind vision can create a visual project. He wasn't supposed to be able to drive, so my buddy Adrian in Mexico made sure he did drive on the beach. I didn't think it was a good idea because he did run into another ATV, but Adrian thought it was great. And about a month ago, as a parent, I got put my Life Scout pin on Jimmy's 5-year plan to become an Eagle as a Boy Scout. And he leads other young men to camp, cook, and be in charge. Things we didn't dream about when he was 11 weeks old because the doc said you couldn't. And this is my biggest problem now. We just came back from a ski vacation in Canada. Jimmy is now the fastest skier in the house. So I just want to remind you that it's only a problem if you make it one. And thanks to my buddy Pat, who left us 3 years ago, that impossible is just a little harder, so don't quit. Thank you very much.